Alright guys, just a quick video today. Pretty much just waiting, right? And there's nothing wrong with that. We did the I guess, very similar thing in April. If you guys remember where we had the daily equal lows here, we wanted to have some kind of shakeout underneath that candle to get our three lower low accumulation, right? And where we ended up getting the terminal shakeout, I would say that started here, and then we had a capitulation following that on 4-4, and then we were looking to buy into that window on 4-7 that lined up really nicely with Vana Charm. But if you guys remember, we were really just pretty much waiting for a month and a half to add into those contracts for May and June. Um, and that pretty much marked the bottom on April 7th, right? And it looked crazy. I'm sure if you flip this chart inverse, it looked like a major breakout, like a massive breakout to the upside if you were to think about this inversely. But really, it was just a shakeout to capture longs, and I think the same exact thing's happening here to pull in buyers at the highs going into, I think, earnings season. Obviously, I think Q3, Q4 is still going to be a sell-off, but it's a little bit more apparent if we look at this from like I would say a weekly perspective on QQQ. I'll go ahead and do a different chart here, but I've been talking about how this is kind of the area that I'm watching, right? This is essentially the buy climax over here. If we just tie this in back here, right? I think this was the up thrust that occurred. And obviously, if you look at this on like a daily and you didn't know this price action was happening on the right-hand side, this would look like a daily distribution, right? Where you have like the buy climax, an up thrust here, and then a distribution. But looking at it now from like a weekly perspective and for how big I think the drop could be, makes sense that this would be kind of like a weekly formation. So once again, kind of like the buy climax here, the up thrust, and then we're now reaching the UTAD or the up thrust after the distribution. And it, like I said, it's a little bit clearer on QQQ actually. If we just switch this over, you guys will see, right, much cleaner in my opinion. Obviously, this has been leading the market, but there's no denying, right, just how set up this is, right? Obviously, with this kind of being like you're the bottom of your distribution range, that's kind of what we'd be targeting again, which lines up really nicely with the 564 on SPY. Obviously, the 580 would be like right around here, so 508 on QQQ. But this is still really set up here. All we're really waiting for, and it's very similar to NVIDIA, is a breakback below 538.33. And we'll kind of use that as our gauge on SPY to see where we're at on that. But very similar, right? But just a little bit different. And like I said, QQQ has been leading the market with tech. Obviously, a big portion of that being AI-driven names and NVIDIA and the likes of that. But if you guys just take a look, even just like a basic distribution pattern, right? I guess I can just pull this one up here. Like super easy to spot, man. Super easy. Usually it's the three prong that you can kind of look for. And usually the UTAD does get a little choppy. I've talked about this, but it's just about kind of being patient in that range. And once you get that breakout, right, if it doesn't have harmonic, I guess, pressure breaking through, it's a little suspect, right? And what we've kind of seen is just a low volume grind up. We've had one, two, three, four, five, six gap ups in a row above into the UTAD here, where people feel like the pressure of just buying calls at the highs. And I know how I put that in the chat today, guys. There's always a constant pressure to compete against your peers, to compete against what other people are making. And when you see that other people are buying, right, and a lot of these people are kind of buying and doing things without rules or having any kind of system, that can kind of lead you and tempt you to be doing the same exact thing as them, right? And a lot of people will just be like, okay, fuck, man, this thing's gapped up for the fourth, fifth time in a row. I'm just going to take calls. And it feeds you. It gives you a little bit of what you want. It gives you a dopamine rush. And that's kind of the whole point behind this is there is a little bit of gambling and a little bit of dopamine rush that comes with doing things that you know you shouldn't be doing. That's what I've gotten really good at is just taming kind of like my emotions and taming my own, I would say, greed, right? And trying to compete against other people. I'm very much in the mindset of just doing the same systematic approach again and again and again. And I'm cool taking weeks off, months off now. I didn't used to be that way, but weeks and or months if I need to until I see something that aligns with how I trade. But really, right, we just talked about this little kind of move up here with the sixth or seventh gap up in a row. All we're really looking for is a break back down, right? I talked about this just to have that climactic push above 538.33, break down back underneath, and what do you know? There's a perfect little gap here too that this can really sit down into. In between, if we just kind of draw it out real quick, I don't have my levels snapping on, so. Um, able to say like 532 to 536. I could see this coming back down, testing the bottom of that, and then pushing right back up, right, and then rejecting. And that would kind of be your breakdown after the UTAD, getting some kind of a test or an LPSY off of this, and then looking for the continuation to the downside. I really think that earnings could be like the catalyst for the move further down. I talked about this in the chat as well. Like there was a lot of leniency and a lot of forward PE given to a lot of these names that were driven by the AI theme, right? A lot of stuff is like, oh wow, that could be amazing. This has a lot of potential. There was no profits behind it, but there was just a lot of hype around names, and the valuation spiked because of the potential for them. But now we're kind of into a range now where is it driving profit? Hey, we're going to have our margins shrunk by a massive amount with the tariffs, the geopolitical news, obviously the race between AI and us and China, and still the lingering kind of factor of Taiwan and China. The margin for error is tiny now, and is it driving profits? Is it making money, right? And that's a huge question now, kind of going into these tech earnings with a lot of the tariff fear still looming. Obviously, the 90-day pause is going to be coming to an end here really shortly as well. I think it's July 9th. So just a lot of little things here. And I want you guys, and I posted about this in the chat today, it was very interesting to see the weakness in tech. Obviously, we had a sell-off day. It wasn't anything super crazy. I thought we could have gotten a little bit more, obviously just 0.84. But if you take a look at IWM had a crazy day today, just a nasty, nasty bid where it's a little concerning to see a flee to not just safety, but a flee to small slash mid cap. And I guess just a safety net away from the tech earnings that could be looming around the corner in the next 2 weeks. And obviously, there's potential here where there's a little bit less geopolitical risk against some of these names. There's a lot kind of going on with the rate cuts that could be happening in September, so there could be an early rotation into this. Just a weird sign to kind of see the rotation into IWM right at as tech is now pushing its kind of highs, right? And I posted about that as well, right? 4% of the S&P is making an all-time high with the index making an all-time high, right? That's very concerning, guys. That's very, very weird. Breadth is really lackluster right now, so just something to kind of keep in mind. That if there is going to be a sell-off, right, it's going to happen very quickly because there's already a lack of participants. If those that are participating also start to sell off, this could get really nasty. And we're not looking for anything crazy, right? I'm not trying to become like the ultimate bear or anything like that. All I'm really looking for is a move down, right, down into 600, probably a bounce, right? Maybe like a retest of that progression gap around like 603, 604. I don't think that's anything crazy. That lines with the QQQ test LPSY. And then from here, looking for a further breakdown to 579, right? 579, I'll maybe start to look for longs again if names look healthy, if things look attractive. If this ends up just being a lower high, right, it looks pretty bad with a weak bounce off of that on the daily and or weekly, I could see this maybe pulling down here, right, 564. Now, if you think about that from kind of like peak to trough, what is that? That's that's an 8% pullback at the worst case scenario, right? And if we end up pulling down to the best case scenario, that's a 6% move. That is not the end of the world. That's not anything bad. I still think that's a really healthy opportunity. It's just I don't want to be buying calls up here. At the time, I didn't want to be buying calls into here because I knew there was that big cluster of the dark pool sellers sitting around the 5905 SPX for the JPM caller. And I pretty much took calls up into here. If you guys remember, I took calls into 565. I was kind of bullish into this range. And then I took my foot off the gas once we gapped up. And I really didn't have a reason to trade long up here. I was taking like spot trades and kind of just picking and choosing small areas with really short expirations. But for the most part, this entire area, I've just been kind of waiting for the short, right? And I wanted to see if we got the daily sequence breakout, and it ended up being like a daily distribution. Was wrong on that one, but I had plenty of time, and I cut those Septembers really quickly. It wasn't that big of a deal. It was like a 27% loss on those. And now kind of just waiting for the UTAD here to add into these. But yeah, QQQ definitely looks the best, so I'm kind of using this as a gauge. Once again, just want to see a break underneath, kind of like that 538. We can kind of pull this down if we want to, underneath the all-time high, right, the previous all-time high, that is, like 540. Just kind of look for a break underneath that, trade into this gap from 532 to like 536. Retest as I have drawn here. get pinned in the progression gap, 536 becomes resistance as well as that 540 spot, and then a lower move down, right, into 508. That's kind of what we're looking for. And that will kind of confirm, it could go deeper, guys. I've mentioned this before. I think, by 2026, I think that we could 100% pull down into 527. I think we can easily pull down into like that 535 spot. There's a lot of little gaps down here, but there's some deeper stuff that I think could be tested. But we'll have to see what ends up happening. I just want to get out of these highs and kind of into a more lucrative range for longs, but I definitely think there's a short side trade here available. And I do think that this more than likely plays out by August, so that's the reason I've been buying the January contracts. So like August is where I think that the majority of my size will be put into. And I've kind of just been waiting for that, right? I'm still sitting at 8 and 8 for contracts. My NVIDIA, I have 5. Let's talk about NVIDIA for a second because this looks pretty damn good, right? Pretty damn good. We were looking off that 152.89 spot. Obviously, same exact setup, kind of breached through the highs. Once again, very low volume as it did so. Almost got like a hanging man candle here that failed to make a new high above 627, and then a nice engulfing or kind of like an outside bar down into the previous all-time high at 152.89. Closed slightly above, so I didn't take any ads. Just an FYI, didn't do anything on that one. I'm still waiting for a break under, whether that's a gap down, retest from below, right? Or if we kind of consolidate here, that's fine too. Just got to wait for some kind of breach of this level and then a retest, like literally like this. That's all we're waiting for. I'll zoom in again real quick. Like that. Just something like this, right? You don't want to be adding into puts when you get a wick like that one. It's just not the smartest thing to be doing. So still just waiting for that. If we can break under, right, some kind of retest under that, I think that we easily kind of push down into the 149 gap. Hell, that could even be what gives us a bounce. Let's just say we sell down into 149 and then there's a big buyer here. That's what pushes us up to 159 or 152.89. That could be your retest instead of this, right? And then what we're looking for is a finishing move down into 147.9 to 147.53. And then potentially, right, we can get some additional slippage. Maybe this gives us a weak bounce, right? And then this pushes down into 144. There could be a nasty move here. And if this looks bad, right, we start to actually see some major warning signs off of this UTAD and higher distribution region. I do think that this could be a trade that we could have consistently throughout the end of Q3, Q4, beginning of next year. I think this can definitely come all the way back down into 108, and there's a lot of room for that. So this could be a really lucrative trade, and just overall chart to be trading throughout the year. With that being said, too, right, taking a look at Meta, we've been kind of waiting for this one. It's been really hard, right? I've taken like three attempts on it, I believe, or something like that. Kind of stepped away for a little bit because it just kept, making new highs. It would consolidate, pop, make a new high, kind of consolidate. But we've been seeing spot signs of distribution throughout the way, right? Every single move that has had a higher volume has resulted in like a big engulfing day, or pretty much all the breakouts haven't had high volume. This was the only one I think that had higher volume here. But the protection of the lows haven't really been that critical. It's just been really strange, right? This has been a weird looking name. But kind of swept over the highs here at 740.91. And I mentioned this too, guys. It's just a little bit weird that like NVIDIA and Meta have been getting these PT upgrades at all-time highs going into their earnings catalyst, with these kind of being the main themes within the AI space, right? I don't know, man. It just feels weird that we kind of know that these are distributions, or they're setting up distributions. They're going into their earnings. People love buying the breakouts. I don't know, man. It feels iffy. But high volume kind of here into the highs, right? Now we're kind of pulling back. So I just want to see how we react in a 708.87. This was that old high here. If this can kind of slip underneath that, same exact thing, right? These all kind of have the same look, where there's a little bit of a gap here at 698. Maybe it bounces off of that one, and that's what gives us our lower high. This could be an opportunity to take some January contracts for like 550. They're a little expensive. They're like 1,500 per or something like that, but that's not too bad if you just take one or two. Gives you plenty of time to add into them as well. And then we're looking for a move back down into 662. Obviously from there you'd expect a lower high, right? This is going to stair step down From there, break under, probably a retest of that spot, and then I think we can get back into this like 630 to like, I don't know, 6, wherever the gap is. I mean, it goes all the way down to 592, but somewhere in this range, right, we could get a nice breach, probably a consolidation, something like that. I don't want to speculate beyond that, but still a lot of opportunity for this to make its way back down into 549. That's really what I've been looking for on this one for a while now. Beginning of the week, right? So we're not going to stress too much about the weekly, but the weekly, gives some good signs here. We just want to see the volume off of this all-time high and kind of how the weekly bar ends up finishing. If we take a look at SPY, kind of the same thing. It's a little too early to take a look still, but it is what it is. QQQ though, right? Q's definitely starting the week off hot, right? This is the distribution kind of chart I've been watching more so than SPY, although I'm using SPY as my vessel or my vehicle to trade with. This obviously is showing some weakness here beginning of the week. So just want to kind of keep my eyes on tech, and obviously NVIDIA, Meta are going to be some bigger names that I'm focused on. But yeah, definitely some warning signs here. And then NVIDIA, let's take a look at NVIDIA. I mean, I already showed you guys the daily on that one. This is pretty much right on the precipice of where I want it to be. And I'll be taking another 5 contracts to get to 10. I don't think I'm going to do anything over that. So those are really the main charts I was looking at. And for the most part, guys, I've been pretty patient. So thanks for bearing with me, guys. I know a lot of you guys, I go through these moments where I'm really hot and I feel like I can take any trade and kind of roll with that. And I had that for a little bit in April, and then we started to get to 565, and I was like, okay, I'm starting to feel a little iffy at these levels. This is as high as I thought it would go. I took my foot off the gas. I kind of spot traded a little bit of Tesla, some MU, if you guys saw. I was taking some stuff here and there. Obviously trying to take a little bit of shorts on things, but then now that we're at these highs, I'm definitely not taking calls, right? I'm sorry. I'm not an all-time high trade out or a breakout trader. I'm not a breakout trader, period. I just feel like it's a lazy style of trading, and I don't like to trade consolidations. You guys should know that. I'm not going to sit in things like this that are just kind of sitting here and wait for it to break out over the top or break down under the bottom. Those usually trap people, right? Apple's a good example here. I'm not going to trade something like this, so I'm okay waiting. I've kind of come to grips with the fact that sometimes it's going to be boring, and that's just how it's designed to be, right? It's not supposed to be this dopamine-filled thing, and if you feel that way, or you feel like you need to kind of compete with other people that you see that are doing well, odds are, I'm going to be completely honest, a lot of people I think are faking it. I've always said that. I think it's impossible to trade every single day and make a lot of money. Usually you'll see people that are either paper trading, or you'll see people that are fabricating certain aspects of it. They're never telling you certain things. Or a lot of people that I've seen now is prop trading. So it's just got to get rid of and eliminate some of these things, these expectations. Figure out what you're good at. It's mean reversion trades, it's accumulations, it's distributions, right? And I've gotten better. I've been trying to talk about this as just reserving a lot of your size for an LPSY or an SOS, LPS, etc., and kind of waiting for that for the options. Sometimes I'll try to get into stuff a little bit early, and I'm doing it right now, right? I don't have anything extreme, but I'll see stuff early, and I'll try to get in on the 3 lower low accumulation and then kind of add in each new low. It's hard, right? It's once you feel like you see stuff before it happens, it's hard to kind of ignore that. So you never know when it's going to happen. That was also part of the reason I did catch NVIDIA, if you guys remember that. On this, what was it? It was the DeepSeek gap. Remember, right around here, we were kind of waiting for a UTAD in this little range here. And I feel like I got kind of lucky catching this just because I had early runners. And then I got, what was it? From I think I held it pretty much to the lows. Yeah, it was a 20% gap down, pretty much. 17, but a 20% move. And that's going to happen with that. But yeah, that's all I really got, guys. Nothing else I really wanted to talk about. Just wanted to jump on here, kind of go over some stuff, talk through things. And I still have plans of doing live trading. I just want to get some stuff behind me. I have my L-shaped, you guys can see I have all my Mac stuff this way, which I actually trade on. And this is my content side, and I would have things facing this way behind me that would look sicker, but now I have to figure out how to renovate behind me here, because this is where I'll do like live Q&A sessions and live stream on this side of my computer. And yeah, So just give me a little bit longer, but I will be kind of integrating live trading back in. I think it'd be kind of cool too to be on like the flip side, right? I think a lot of people are still trading the breakouts and are still expecting upside, so I think it'll be cool, or maybe not cool, and you guys can see massive drawdown. I won't be massive, but I will go through some pretty significant drawdown. But either way, I think it'll be cool for people to just kind of see the daily functions of trading, right, and what it's really like. Because, yeah, like I said, I think a lot of BS happens. So right now, it's just the boring part of it, and I think it'll pay dividends. So with that being said, I'm gonna call it there, guys. I think I ranted long enough. Um, yeah, it should be good. All right, I'll go ahead and post this here. Tomorrow, by the way, we do have a couple things. So tomorrow we have unemployment rate, obviously ADP. We have, I think that's the main stuff. For Thursday, we have NFP. We have quite a bit going on Thursday, and then obviously the market's closed on Friday. And then next week's going to be the real fun one. Where's it at? What the heck? I think we have CPI. Yeah, CPI, July 15th. So that's the following week. I think that's going to be really important as always. But coming up here to end out this week, right? Where are we? Where are we? Bro, I'm just going to use this. What am I doing? I feel like this is so much easier. The Thinkorswim one gives me everything. I just like to narrow it down to what's actually important. So yes, 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 yes. Tomorrow, there's nothing. Okay, it's good to know. So tomorrow, nothing really going on. Thursday, yes, I was right. NFP and then PMI, and then following week we have FOMC minutes. So nothing next week really. Following week, so 2 weeks from now, PPI. That CPI print's going to be huge. We have a lot going on there. So next 2 weeks should be pretty cool. Should be pretty fun. And then this week here leads us right into the tech earnings, right? So next 2 weeks, and then kind of after that, right, we have just a lot of volatility. So be prepared for that. Yeah, it's going to be a fun couple weeks, man, for sure. So just kind of stay on your toes. Still, like I said, I wouldn't like take super crazy ads into anything just yet. I would still be primarily cash. I still have cash on hand for spot trades too. So if I see an SPX opportunity for call side, I'm going to take that. If I see a quick short side trade like I did this even today, right? So QQQ, or not today, sorry, Qs, like the move down that we were looking for, right? So I went short like somewhere here, right? And then we ended up getting the sell off. I believe it was down into like here. And I ended up kind of closing this as it wicked under, right? I got half off, and then it ended up ripping up all the way into the high day, and I couldn't get the other half out. And I was in drawdown, right? I was in drawdown. There's nothing wrong with that, but I just wanted to see if we'd kind of close back over the highs here because we printed a nasty kind of shooting star candle here. Obviously, the last 15 minutes and that volume's irrelevant, but that's kind of what I was looking for. I kind of had my risk around here near these highs or right around the close if I could. And we ended up opening, kind of pushed up a little bit of a lower high here relative to this previous close. And then we sold, right? And as the market opened, that's when I took off my other half. I probably shouldn't have done that, but I netted 75 bucks today, right? I mean, I made $75 on that. So I'll take that. It wasn't the greatest thing, but yesterday I think I made like 220 off of the initial half that I trimmed. Today I made 73. I showed you guys that too. I posted all my positions, so it's not a shouldn't be like a surprise. But yeah, lower high. I wish I would have held that because tech just completely melted. These went like 150%. So yeah, that's pretty much the only other thing that I guess I should cover. That was like the one other position. And then Nvidia is obviously the sell-off today was pretty nice as well. Didn't trim anything on that one. Still think this is a lower high that could see a little bit lower, but I've already talked about that. So that's all I really wanted to cover. I think I hit all the ground bases. So I'm going to call it there, guys. I'll see you guys tomorrow. I'll let you guys know if there's any like day trades that I want to take, but for the most part, still just kind of waiting for that daily signal for a break underneath the previous up thrust high. And then obviously you want to see a bearish print, which is a reversal bar on high volume. I think that's the sign to kind of start adding in. So that's going to be all. Appreciate it, guys.